So is 56 really the age you need to be to buy a home today? I'm Realtor Nick Belmore, and thank you for coming back to the channel. Today we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to react to a story out there on Breaking Points about the rise in the median age of home ownership here in the United States. A friend of mine sent me this video, kind of told me, hey Nick, you should react to this. It's going to trigger you in a few ways. Let's dive in and let's take a look at the video.
While certain prices, like consumer electronics, perfect example, the prices continue to go down and down and down. And this is sort of like the deal that's been offered to people is you can have a bunch of stuff like that, but you cannot own a home. And let's put this up on the screen.
That's the deal that's been offered to people. You can have consumer electronics, but you can't buy a home. All right, let's learn more about this.
This is Washington Post has new, really extraordinary numbers about what's going on in the housing market. So first of all, the share of homes that are bought with all cash, now a third.
Yep.
A third of the market. And if you look, they had a map in here too. If you look at the map, there are certain places where it's like a majority of the home purchases are all cash. Like if you're a young person with, you know, a decent career, college educated, whatever, professional, white collar, and you are trying to buy a home, like who's gonna have $600,000 just sitting in
600
just
you're
sitting
lucky.
in the bank?
I just looked at my neighborhood, 45% all cash. And that is this is a place where, you know, you can't even buy anything for less than like $800,000.
That's crazy.
Who has 1.2
That's
million
crazy.
sitting around? I mean, look, in reality, the way this stuff usually works is they don't have 1.2 million, but they have a huge amount of stock assets and they borrow against that or whatever and use margin loan. But this is all like stuff that very, very rich people do all the time. But the point is that they have an extraordinary net worth to draw upon. And what's actually crazier about the cash is not that, it's the effect that it has had on the average home buyer in the United States. So we have this graph that's included here, which is very important.
Okay, wait a minute. You're so rich that you live in a neighborhood where the low end is 800,000. That's the entry point, not the average. The entry point is 800,000, and we're supposed to compare that what? To the average home in America in the low fours? That's a little bit crazy. Would we expect there to be more cash where rich people live, where millionaires live? Yeah, of course. I mean, you're talking about double the average price for the lowest homes in your neighborhood. So it's one of those things where, is that a real comparison? I mean, yeah, of course there's a much more bigger slice of people that are buying in cash when rates are, you know, in the low sevens or they peaked in the 8.5s. And all of a sudden now you think that millionaires aren't going to use their cash to buy homes that are 2 and 3 times the amount? Of course they would. It's a silly comparison. So that being said, let's make a little bit of that comparison to here in West Michigan. With his neighborhood looking in the 40s in cash, and of course they're talking about 33 or 34% across the board is what they're seeing. The reality is here in West Michigan, we actually have only 20% of the homes selling for cash, which means what? 80% of these homes are selling on a mortgage versus just cash. This is one where I don't know if this comparison is really accurate as we're starting to take a look at it. Should we be making a comparison to the most expensive homes in the nation? Like that's what the average person is buying and being blocked out of? That seems like a crazy comparison to me. And it's cool that you live in such an expensive area, but that's not how normal people are living. That's not the competition. That being said, I have to admit, 20% is much higher historically than we have seen here in West Michigan, where it's run right around that 10 and 12% of our market going cash on average. So no doubt it has increased, it has doubled. Again, could that come back to the highest cost of lending we've seen in several years? I gotta think that's definitely a factor when we look at those numbers.
So in 2007, the average home buyer in the United States was 39 years old. So by 2011, after the new housing regs kick in, the average home price ticks up to 45. Things start to stabilize around then and they start to climb. 2020, right before the pandemic, it hits a record of 47. But then by 2022, after the massive increase in home prices, it jumps from 45 to 53. And in 2024, the average home buyer in the United States is now 56 years old. What's even more shocking about that, and this is a primary residence, by the way, primary residence, is that the average home buyer who is a first-time buyer has now risen to 38 years old.
Wow.
That's from 35 just last year. So an aggregate increase of 3 years. That is 3 years of delayed life in just 3. Now consider that this is, again, primary residences. So you have boomers here amassing huge amounts of cash, using that cash to be able to put average, to be able to put all cash offers on houses, meaning anybody's got a mortgage. Why would anybody even look at you, right? Somebody can just send me a wire transfer. Easy, right? I'm buying the house. But then the other problem with this is we see already is that millennial wealth has actually increased over the last few years, and it's from people who are able to buy homes. Now, what we see though inside of that is that while some of those people were able to buy it of their own accord, many of them were helped by their parents. That's great. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But what it does mean is that if you're not lucky enough to have and to come from some generational wealth, you're screwed.
First thing I want to address in this, let me say this. If you're just under 40 and you can't afford a house, what we're probably talking about more than the affordability is down payment. Why? Because you're probably not living at home with mom and dad at 38. You're renting. And most of the time when people are paying their rent, they're usually paying more than what it would cost at that stage to own a home and the payment just the same. It's not a matter of they can't afford it monthly if that's the case. I think it's more coming into the down payment. And the idea that you need rich parents, I get that. I hear what he's saying. But let's put this into reality versus his super millionaire suburbs where everybody lives in mansions and ridiculous housing. The reality is here in West Michigan, the list to sale ratio is 99%. That means that people aren't paying full price. So if you come to the seller, let me tell you this, they care about their net. They care about their bottom line. If I walk in with a cash offer, and let's say the average home here, about $350,000, if I walk in with a cash offer at $335 and somebody comes in with a financed offer at $355, do you think that seller won't wait 30 days for $20,000 more dollars in their pocket? Yeah, they will. So right out of the gate, I think this is definitely a false equivalency when we're pretending that if you don't have rich parents, you're being cut out of the market. If you're in some super mansion suburb of Washington, D.C., where the corruption is outrageous and they're siphoning money off the government to drive $2 million house prices, then yeah, that might be a real comparison. You need daddy's generational wealth to move forward from there. If you want to buy a house in the majority of places here in America, you have access to several different low down payment programs. First, FHA, 3.5% down. So a lot of people can absolutely save up and muster together 3.5% to get into a home and start to save money on rent. If you've served in the military, you have access to a VA loan, and you are absolutely able to get in for zero down and get a seller concession to help you pay for some of the closing costs. Just like FHA, you can get that concession as well. And last but not least, if you want to look at a rural development loan and you're okay moving out into the country a little bit, you can absolutely move in for zero down and get yourself a seller concession paid so that your money out of pocket is fairly minimal. Now again, 99% list to sale ratio, so this isn't people driving these prices up like mad and overpaying. You absolutely have the opportunity to outbid a cash offer that's lower when you're doing a financing offer that incentivizes the seller to take yours with the offer price itself. I'm a little concerned that the oversimplification in this video is really creating a false equivalency of the barrier in millionaire mansion neighborhoods versus real towns across America.
When we're in an average age of 56 years old, that is late stage Republic shit. 56 years old. If you're 56, you're 3 years away from being able to withdraw from your freaking Roth IRA. That's like, when you're 38, the average 38-year-old in the United States has like 2 children, and is married. Like, that's well into to life. Maybe like a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or something like that. You're renting that entire time and amassing zero equity, and then now with a mortgage rate around 7%. I mean, this is the most stark stat that I've seen in a long time. When I read it, I honestly couldn't believe it. I go, 56 years old. Your life is mostly over at 56 years old when you're the average home buyer. That stat should be reversed. It should be 30 years old, something like that for the average.
Okay, I agree. That stat should be reversed. Also, I kind of question where that stat comes from. I feel like that might be an isolated sliver of a specific time in order to create a point. I can at least anecdotally say, as I have worked in the real estate industry for the past 23 years, and run a real estate team today, our average buyer definitely isn't 56. For the most part, we have a ton of people in their mid-20s out buying as first-time buyers, in their early 30s. Maybe it is. Hey, listen, if you're out there and you're in mansion land, that could be 56 is the average of those buyers. That being said, it's just not my personal experience here in West Michigan. And I feel like we're again creating this fake barrier to sensationalize this story a little bit.
And then, look, there are so many different policies in different areas, but this, by the way, will be a major test for the Trump administration, because if this does increase, you are gonna see some crazy shit happen in 4 years. I just do not think that this is sustainable.
Okay, I would agree. It's not sustainable, and it is a major task for the Trump administration. And we did a video right here that actually talks about how the Trump administration plans to address the housing crisis and what some of their plans are. Little spoiler alert, there's no quickly fixing anything that's happening in the housing economy right now, but there is no question increasing supply is a huge key to bringing balance into the housing market.
Had an exponential increase in the average age for the home buyer, in the average age for the first time. And if you keep things this accessible, if you think about that 35-year-old, and like now it's currently the 38, they're gonna be like in their mid-40s at the end of the Trump administration. And they're like, okay, I'm still not being able to afford a house. What are we doing here? I'm 10 years away from retirement.
Yeah.
Or at least retirement age, allegedly. That's crazy.
Yeah, this is where the abundance agenda people have a point, is like because you need a variety of solutions. You do need a massive surge in building and, a surge of housing into the market. You need the government to be involved in that, because oftentimes, the housing units that are built are not geared towards affordability or even, first-time home buyers. So you need government involved in that. Potentially also something like what Kamala is proposing, assistance with that down payment for first-time home buyers, because that also is a real stumbling block for a lot of people. And you got to get permanent capital out of these markets. Like, it needs to go to human beings first. And that's not the only thing that's going on here, but the dramatic introduction of permanent capital into these markets, where they're buying up entire trailer parks, they're buying up entire neighborhoods, and pushing out regular homeowners and then renting them back to them. That also has to be dealt with. And then you've got the rental side of this too, with the collusion that has significantly raised rental prices that, continues to basically rob people. That's got to be dealt with as well. So there's a lot that needs to be done. But, I think we have one more graphic we can show you guys to show the increase over time.
This is what they're talking about probably when they were saying, Nick, this video could trigger you a little bit. So let me say this. Point 1, disagree. Point 2, agree. Point 3, disagree. Let me break that down just a teeny bit. First thing she says is that we need to go ahead and give down payment assistance to bring more people in. No, we don't. That's not really what needs to happen here. Why? Because down payment assistance is really welfare to the bank. You're just going ahead at that stage and decreasing the bank's risk? No, that's not the solution here. The solution here, in my eyes, is absolutely the fact that we need more entry-level inventory for people to purchase at this point. The debt here is really created by our not creating entry-level housing versus mini mansions in the building industry. So looking at this incentivization of assisting with down payments, why aren't we using the low down payment loans that already exist? Why would we prop up banks with government welfare into securing their loans that they're making for profit, by the way. So I'm gonna have to say in that case, I don't see that as a solution. What do I see as government intervention solution? Incentivizing builders to build affordable entry-level housing. Whether it's a tax incentive, whether it's decreasing regulation, whatever it needs to be, maybe it's both. That, without a doubt, is gonna be far more effective than down payment assistance from the government. Second point, I'm gonna have to agree. Foreign investment in our real estate market is such a bad policy for us as a country, especially because these companies are not going after the mini mansions, they're going after the starter homes because they're still getting a great appreciation rate and they have the right data to make those the best and most profitable rentals in that time. I 100% believe that it should be either cut out completely or it should be taxed to the point where it's a major burden for foreign countries to invest in our housing market, especially when they're on a level playing field versus that 28-year-old college graduate with their first job. That's who we need to be incentivizing into home ownership because that's really the person that's going to build equity and buy up and move up. And then what? Free up their starter home for the next person to go through that same process. So 100% agree on that point. Let's get foreign investment out of our residential real estate as soon as we can. Last point she made, collusion on rental. And what she's referring to there is the fact that a lot of the corporate landlords started employing an algorithm to determine pricing of rentals. Is that collusion? I don't quite know that it is. That being said, this whole entire game with rent increase is absolutely also based on the supply and demand issue. If there was more rental inventory available, it would absolutely drive the price of rentals down. It's definitely not an issue of AI reporting rent and figuring rent back and forth versus an issue of not having enough rentals that landlords are forced to price accordingly to stop vacancy. When you have a rental empty for 2 or 3 months, there's no 100 or 200 more dollars in rent that's going to make up that gap. The key is getting into the window of affordability and getting your rental filled. So again, some stuff I agree with, some stuff in that I quite frankly found absolutely ridiculous.
And you can see in every single market that they list here over time, more and more and more of the sales are all cash. So number one, Naples, Florida. Now 60% of that market is all cash. If you don't have the money sitting in your bank account or are able to obtain with a loan against your stock market holdings or whatever from mom and dad, forget about it. Just crazy. Look at Augusta, Georgia there. Went from 23% all cash just in 2018. We're not talking about decades ago. 2018. That feels like a blink of an eye ago. To 42% now. You know, heading up towards a majority of the market. That's wild to see the way that trend has unfolded.
The whole thing is crazy, and if you look at all these places, unfortunately, these are a lot of places where a lot of Americans want to move too, right? So
yeah,
it means
that's
that
right.
the new people who are coming in are having a lot of difficulty. I just checked Naples, Florida. You can have a house anywhere from $4 million to $400,000, but that's a lot of money no matter what. In Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, they have Winston, North Carolina there on the list. New Orleans, they have there on the list. Miami, Jacksonville, Augusta. All of these are places with huge net in-migration from across the country. It makes me also feel for some
that
people.
property insurance situation down in Florida might be changing the game there.
Certainly true.
In Miami in particular.
But, I mean, even looking around this, here in Washington, D.C., in the Georgetown neighborhood, one of the richest neighborhoods here in Washington, 67% of houses are being bought with all cash.
A couple things we got to look at on that list. Here we are. We're a nation of 50 states, and 60% of this list is in Florida. I've been to Naples, Florida. $400,000 as an entry level in Naples, Florida is literally a falling down trailer shack on a piece of swampland. That's not what you're looking at in Naples. Naples is a very expensive area. So does it make sense that a very expensive area, who does have an older age demographic, would have a higher percentage of cash sales? I'd say so. No question about it. Same thing as you go through a good chunk of that list. Miami, are we honestly trying to compare cash sales in Miami to cash sales in St. Louis or Knoxville or any of these other more normal American cities. I mean, come on, this is absolutely, in my eyes, a complete false equivalency to compare the national real estate market to these pocket cities in Florida. Jacksonville, same thing. Shout out to my cousin Jenny who lives over in Jacksonville. I promise you, she's not running around paying cash for super expensive houses. Is this really an accurate picture of what's going on in the American landscape? Or is this kind of a niche pocket of our most expensive areas, clearly in Florida, Georgia, the next state above? I mean, this is more a picture of what seems like some issues in the South and in resort towns. And would those places absolutely draw in a higher percentage of cash compared to West Michigan? Seems like they would, but is that really a nationwide problem stopping young people from buying houses? Quite honestly, I don't think it is. A little bit of cherry picking some data in that graph, in my opinion. Naples, Florida for 400. Come on, Sagar. That's ridiculous.
That's outrageous to me. I honestly can't believe it, even looking at it. Some of the places that I've lived in the past here in Washington are looking around 46, 47, 50, 60%. It's like, what are people supposed to do? You might as well be, you better be a damn good defense contractor to be able to
you better be selling your soul.
For real, though. I mean, and that's the other thing. Is
the reality.
Has major implications in terms of, this has major implications too for choices that people make. So everyone's always talking about like, why don't the elite members of society pursue public service? It's like, well, debt is a huge part of it. I mean, I went to school with a lot of people who wanted to work in public service, and by and large, almost all of them are now corporate lawyers. And it's not because they want to, but you rack up 200 grand in debt, 250, 300. You don't have a lot of choice. They don't even want to do it, but they have to. Yeah. And that story goes on forever. This is the same case with a lot of people who attend Harvard or Yale. If you do so.
Are you really trying to make me feel bad for corporate lawyers and the debt that they incurred? Because it's not working. Quite honestly, again, this is where we're getting into a false equivalency with a sliver of rich people that might be facing some problems. The average American isn't in a $2 million neighborhood. And quite honestly, my sympathy for those that are is not that great.
You're looking at roughly $100,000 probably or so in student debt with no financial assistance. I think that's on the lower end. But again, it makes sense why you go to McKinsey. Same with doctors. This is a major conversation in medicine. Everyone's decrying the fall of the family practice, of the people with a small practice and less patients. The reason why they go work at hospital guarantee you cut paycheck, 400 grand a year, boom, I've got 300 grand in debt. I'm not taking a risk. I'm doing a small business. Maybe when I'm 50, it's one of those where all of these things have cascading effects.
And now I'm supposed to have sympathy for the doctor making $400,000 a year. Oh, by the way, here in the state of Michigan, the average income is right around that $45,000 mark. So yeah, let me cry a giant river for doctors making $400K, and then they have to move into $2 million neighborhoods too, and they can't afford it, and they're forced to work at the hospital for their debt. Yeah. Okay.
It's genuinely devastating for a lot of people out there. So if you were the 38-year-old and you still can't buy, I feel for you, man. That's devastating. I don't know how it would feel.
If you're a 38-year-old and you still can't buy, reach out to me. I'll teach you what to do. There's a ton of things out there. You might not be buying in a $2 million neighborhood, but you can absolutely own a home in the United States of America.
Know with absolute certainty as an American citizen that you are worse off than your parents and even your grandparents who grew up in the boomer age. It's just crazy.
So there you have it. I'm going to tell you a few things in there that I absolutely agreed with, few things in there that I thought were absolutely ridiculous. Nonetheless, I was really excited to see that the housing market and some of the things that are really going wrong in it are at least starting to get highlight into some of these news shows. I'm definitely grateful for that. I'm grateful also that you guys have tuned in and watched this content and learned more about the real estate market. I definitely appreciate that. If you found value in this video, help me out. Please like and subscribe so that I can keep keep bringing you more videos about real estate in the future. And if you're thinking about getting into the right home for you and your family here in West Michigan, reach out to me. My contact information is in the description below, and I would love to help you find the right house that fits you and your needs for the right payment here in West Michigan.